So we are at a rest stop in Marion, and it's a pretty nice place. There's actually almost zero highway noise here, believe it or not. Traffic's not too bad, really. Getting ready to crawl up underneath our bus because I'm getting ready to pull the other side of my drop box out. I'm just going to do it myself. I've already done the upper bearings on the box. I'm going to do the lower bearings. I'm also going to check the gears on the lower side of the drop box that go into the differential. There's a little bit of prep work involved with getting to the nuts and bolts on this drop box. Had to use quite a bit of brake cleaner, which wasn't the greatest cleaning product to use. Did give me a little bit of a headache being in an enclosed area, so not the brightest decision, but I had to use what I could. Just used a soft bristle wire brush to clean up the bolt heads. And then here I'm just removing the drive shaft, and I've already done that, so that was a pretty quick and easy process. Now on the cap for the shims and the bearing preset, I was just really careful when I got down to removing it because I did not want to bend up any of the shims as I was pulling the cap off. You can see here, just nice and easy. I don't want to bend them up because I want everything to go right back the same way as I took it off. So just going to clean it up and move forward on the project here. So now I'll pull the drive shaft upper gear out, which I've already done here, and I have the shims off of it as well. And then I'll work to the back side of the mid gear and pull the large plate off of the back. The upper gear, mid gear, there is the drop box case. I pulled the diff drain plug and there was definitely metal stuck to the plug. So there's definitely something that has broken and is now in the bottom of the differential. And you can see right here, that's where it got toasted. So pretty nasty. I'm just gonna turn this to see what the ring gear looks like. It's got some chips in it there. You can see right there. I keep going around. There's some more chips in it there. Oh yeah. So boom. She gone. Well, I was kind of wishing that it would have just been the pinion gear and I could have replaced it, but unfortunately with it being the ring gear, I needed to start sourcing a new differential. Honestly, you know, these aren't ideal working conditions, but I've just had so many shops tell me no that I'm just tired of hearing it. I guess, you know, a bus just takes up a lot of real estate at a shop. If you take it to a heavy duty drivetrain specialist, you know, normally they're working on semi trucks. And for the space that this is going to take up, they could have 2 semi trucks in their shop instead of just 1 bus. The other huge liability with buses is that the older ones, you know, they tend to have a lot of rust on them, and there's a good amount of maintenance that's been missed on these. So sometimes when you turn 1 bolt, you just end up breaking something else or causing another issue in these buses. So a lot of people just don't want to run into that, so they just keep saying no to just get you to go away. Now, that might sound harsh, but it's true. And quite honestly, when you have fleet accounts, you know, you don't always want to make time for the little guys that really need help. So this is the diff. That is the old pinion gear, but this is the new diff. I have found a mechanic that is willing to travel here. He's actually been helping me out with the bus. He was the guy that I mentioned in the first video, Pablo. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna use what tools I have and get underneath the bus. And I have to reroute a lot of airlines to get them out of the way so that whenever I swing the old differential out, I'm not hitting anything. I'm gonna go ahead and pull my differential out with the tools that I have, and then when he gets here, I'm gonna have the bus ready to go, and he's just gonna crawl in there with me and help get it going. And my beam is gonna go across that V section over to this V section, and then I'm gonna hook up a chain around here, and then I'm gonna start prying on this to try and work it out. I've been under here after I've moved everything. It's probably taken me a good hour and a half just to finally get the old differential out. Basically what I did is use my bottle jack to jack up the ring gear to level it out so that I could just push it out. Now everything underneath here held just fine, and I'll show you what I've done. So I've got the crossbar here. The bar held just fine. I've got the crank up there, and there's the diff. That is where I am at. I used the bottle jack against the teeth to push them up off the bottom so that I could just shove this out. Now, to get a good look at my busted teeth there you go. And then there's plenty along here that have also broken, all of these. So it's just been slowly happening. And I honestly think that part of this had to do with the secondary owners, or maybe even the first owners. They blew the engine, and it was a manual transmission, and they say that dumping the clutch or popping the clutch too hard can cause this. If you have a manual, just keep that in mind. And if you need to, definitely change your fluid so that your fluid can cool properly. Now my next plan is to put this pan underneath here so that I can lay this down on this piece and drag it out through there. Now I got to take my wheels off still, but I want this to be one swoop, so there's enough space between that and that fender well that I can take my tires off and just pull it in here like this, and then take the old one out. Now, in preparation for the new differential going in, I do still need to go through this and clean a lot of the old oil out, and get as many of the old pieces of metal out of the tubing as well. Now, it was suggested that I just run this a few miles and then completely flush the fluid out, but this is something I plan on doing once I get parked again. I do need to wipe it all out of here though, and I see like I've got little chunks everywhere. Now, this is Pablo's service van. He typically just operates out of his garage, but he was nice enough to come help me. Well, Pablo couldn't have showed up at a better time than now that it's starting to rain. So we're getting ready to pull off the dually wheels here on the back of the bus. And then I have my diff right there ready to go on chains. This man's all about getting the work done though. So we're gonna set that right here on this. It's gonna bolt up to position it, and that's gonna make it so much easier when we go to stick that in underneath the bus, or when we go to stick it into the actual the axle housing. And then it also has, if you're not familiar with transmission jacks, but it also has a crank right here so that you can turn it to align the hole. Much as I want to record all this, I gotta help Pablo. All right, took us about an hour to get this maneuvered in there. We could not use the jack over there. There just wasn't enough space to work it, and it required more modding than we wanted to do. So we added some distance in our hanger here by adding a jack stand up there. And then rather than using the hook on the pulley over there, we just eliminated the hook and overlapped the chains here to give us more height on the actual pulley. We've already cleaned the surfaces, but we sprayed it with brake cleaner, and then we're getting ready to put our gasket or our sealer in there. Pablo's been an awesome dude, awesome dude. So we got a nice solid bead around the differential housing there, or the carrier case. And the rest of the work is just up to me. I'm just gonna go through and set a nice bead on the differential casing there and raise my drop box into position. This thing weighs, I would say empty, I would say it weighs probably 70 to 90 pounds. It's really hard to tell, but it's definitely not a light piece of metal, and it's very awkward. So just be careful if you're doing this and you're lifting it overhead. It's not an easy piece of metal to work with. Now, once I got the drop box housing in its position and mounted up, installing the mid gear and the main axle or drive shaft gear was pretty much just the reverse. I just installed all the exact same shims for preload, and put gasket or sealer on both sides of the contact surfaces of the caps and the preset caps or preload bearing caps. Now, I will say I did use a lot of just open end and closed end wrenches on this. I wasn't really able to get air tools down there, believe it or not. It was just too much there was a lot of hard places to get into with a lot of that stuff. So to break a lot of these bolts, or a lot of the nuts and bolts loose, I just used a 5-pound sledgehammer and hit the wrench until it busted them loose. So you got to do what you got to do. But here I've got a nice gasket in, and I'm going to start setting the mid gear, and then I'll move on to the upper gear. So the lighting's probably bad, but this is where I am at. I'm getting ready to put the axles back into the shafts, or put the shafts back in the axle housing on the rear axle. I do have one of the tires jacked up now. I have to unlock the brakes so that one of the wheels will spin freely as I put the axles back in. And then once again, probably a terrible camera angle, but there you can see my sealer, nice even bead around everything. So I still have to put all my air components back on. Quite a bit of mess under here. Got a lot of tools to drag out, but I'm gonna get it finished up. All right, so it is the morning after we have finished up. We're getting ready to get on the highway and just do a little 6-mile run, and then I'll stop at another rest stop on the other side of the highway, and I'm just going to pull the differential plug and check the fluids. Everything's got to get heated up and mixed in nicely in all the gears and everything. So but here's what the bin looks like. Things are still grody down there, but we're gonna pull out of here and see how things go. All right, so here we go, pulling out for the first time after we had all this work, or after we just did all the work. So we're gonna take it easy. We're gonna take it easy on the highway. So far so good, everything is nice and smooth. But the oils need to mix up, and then I'm gonna pull over. I really need the bearings to get nice and soaked. Admittedly, I did not pre-soak the bearings, and that's because the glue, the seals, needed at least 24 hours. It was recommended for the seals to have at least 24 hours to set up properly, and I just didn't want to pour fluid on them, and I needed to move forward with this. But so far everything feels great. This really is a nice rest stop. No one hassled us about working on the bus, which, had it been a bigger project, I mean, they may have came after us for something. Had it been a bigger project, they might have said something, but I was able to kind of be, I was able to be a little discreet doing it. If I was pulling an engine out in here, I don't know about that. But you really need a pit to do this kind of work. I mean, obviously, yeah, it can be done on the ground, some of this work, but you really want a pit. Now all right, I'm getting up to speed here. Just don't want to go too fast out the gate. Oh, it's so bright today. I'm up to 30 miles an hour and everything is super smooth, so I don't have any real fears that's going to be bad. I'm just going to be quiet and listen for just a second. Man, I'm so happy about this. Ready to get parked somewhere and just do some things about living a mobile life is really just not being mobile. I didn't hate that I was doing the work. I didn't hate that I was getting disgustingly oily, gross. I didn't hate that I had to pay for things. I hated being stuck. Like, I absolutely just was so... Being stuck was very discouraging. So I'm at 45 miles an hour right now. Coming up on 50, everything is doing great. I'm just gonna do a loop. I'm gonna crawl under the bus one last time to check the fluids and make sure that just everything is good. Probably when we get to our next when we get to our next harvest hose, I'm going to crawl under the bus and just go over everything and make sure everything is torqued down one last time, because, you know, after 100 miles, you know, things can vibrate loose, but I just want to double check my axles, make sure all that is, you know, good. But even the, you know, our bus has had this crazy downshifting so ever since we first bought our bus, it has had a very hard second gear engagement. Even the torque converter has always kind of slammed into gear. And you know, I thought that was just how a torque converter engages. You know, you're learning. You know, if it doesn't shift hard, then something's wrong, right? Well, that's wrong. You know, you'll have people in the bus community tell you, or even mechanics, oh, if it's not shifting hard, it ain't, you know, that's when you should worry, because then you got slippage, right? Well, this has been going on for 2 years. And it's just, I remember all of the times that we were driving and the bus would shift hard, and then there were two times specifically that the transmission, while I was rolling, the transmission actually engaged very hard. It was an extremely loud bang. And the last one was when we were in Sefner coming to a stop. It was so bad that I actually thought that somebody had hit our Jeep, and I got out and went back to the guy behind us, and he was just kind of like waving at me, you know, nothing happened. But now I know what was wrong. You know, those bangs that I heard was the teeth, was the ring and pinion engaging crooked, and the teeth were just breaking away. So if you ever have an engagement in your transmission that you think is your transmission and it's a little rough, start checking your fluids, because you want to start looking at your drain plugs. They have magnets on them, and they're going to hold any metal that comes by there, and you want to check that for any kind of just shards, any sparkly stuff, you name it, because if you see it, you've got some issues and you need to address them. Okay, so I'm under here one more time. We've just driven about 4 miles. Oh yeah, it's good. I love it. But I have my drain plug right here. I need to go ahead and pull it and see if any more metal has moved around. I've only driven a few miles, so I don't know if it has stirred enough to actually get the stuff down there, but I'm gonna do it. It's a little messy. See there? Glad I checked. Ideally what I want to do is just drain all of this fluid, but again, I'm just trying to get in a spot. I'm trying to get it in a good parking spot so I can get it done, but I wanted to at least share with you where we're at on this. Okay, so you stuck around to the end to hear some of the juicy numbers. Let's start with the differential because it was the bulk of the expense. That set me back $26.75. It was a used differential, however, it was in mint condition and it was a direct fit that was only a 45-minute drive away from me. Next, we'll move on to the bearings and races. Those all set me back about $600. Now, I didn't have all the tools I needed on hand to do this, but I didn't have to go buy any specialty tools other than the engine support bar and the pulley and a few extra chains. That total cost was about $500, bringing our grand total for the initial cost of tools and parts up to $37.75. Now, I'm going to add in Pablo's labor because I did have to pay him for 5.5 hours of drive time. I had no problems with that because he literally dropped everything he was doing to come help me out. That's just a huge blessing. I don't know how else to say it. His total labor was 3 hours, but I did have to pay him for 2.5 hours of drive time. His total cost was approximately $762. Quite literally, I couldn't have broke down in a better place other than the fact that everything I needed was about 30 minutes to an hour in every direction. Oh well. Now I'll move on to the bearings and races. I did pay a shop to put those in for me because I didn't have a 50-ton press on hand to complete that task. That set me back $300 in labor fees, bringing our new total up to $48.37. So I did need hub oil and gasket material, so that was about another $200, bringing our total up to $5,037. I'm gonna go ahead and just throw $150 in there for fuel costs. Why? Because I had to drive around. That will now bring our total up to $51.87. Now, that is just an approximate how much money did I have to throw at it immediately. Almost $5,200 in just materials that I had to go buy to fix my bus. So how much did I save? I know personally that I have at least 50 hours of physical labor time myself in this bus. That means being underneath it, cleaning parts, doing all the hard physical labor. 50 hours at $125 an hour, which that's kind of, I mean, I know that people charge more than that, but let's just say that's the magic number for this project. That would put me at $6,100. So, okay, I saved $6,100. Well, let's take the numbers to a shop level, and please elaborate in the comment area if you'd like. I might be estimating a little low for this, but let's just say a shop wanted to charge me 60 hours total for labor. That would put the cost at $7,500 for this project. Not to mention, I would have been out of a bus anywhere from two weeks to an entire month, which means I would have had to pay for room and board somewhere else. 2 weeks to a month was easily $2,000. With those numbers in mind, that brings the magic number of labor and added expenses up to $9,500. So this number could either seem exaggerated, right on target, or even below what it actually cost. That's easily there for you to judge. I just thought I'd share the experience. Until next time.